Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the lyrics from Harlott, Detritus of the Final Age, out November 13th on Metal Blade Records. The album has 10 tracks, 48 minutes in length, and this is the band's 4th full-length studio album. This year has been an absolute shit show, but as far as thrash metal albums are concerned, this is the year that keeps on giving, and this one is an absolute banger. I want to start off by saying that I really enjoy the structure of the album because it gave me two different perspectives. The overall perspective is that this is an album that is very linear, very balanced, very cohesive, having a very similar soundscape across all 10 songs. So it flows well, but it flows almost in a very expected way. Like you almost get a feeling that you know what you're going to get with the next track. Now, when you listen to the tracks and you look closer at the songs individually, you start to see some slight changes from track to track, either in the soundscape, the sound approach, or in the overall construction that the songs have. These slight changes are changes that create a big impact in the overall experience of the album. So they're not changing much from song to song, and that's why the overall album feels very balanced. But those changes are just enough to make the record a lot more fluid, a lot more dynamic, and a lot more engaging. When you get into the sound, this is a record that's not polished, it's not overly produced. There is a little bit of grittiness to the overall sound. It feels raw, it feels like it was perhaps recorded in a jam session. You get that almost live feel to how this record comes across. That sound works perfectly well with this album because it matches the intensity that the record has. The two go hand in hand. When you have an album that is this aggressive, that moves this fast across all 10 tracks, adding that grittiness, that raw sensation to the sound, that dirt to how the tracks come across, makes it come to life, makes it feel even more aggressive, more intense, and more brutal. Deeper into the sound, you really have to break it down into three core elements: the bass, guitars, and drums. Now, the bass is the main reason why the soundscape of this album is what it is, because there's so much bass coming across in the mix, and it makes the sound overall, like I said, very gritty. I love it. It's not like it's just happening in one song or parts of songs. It's happening on every single track across all 10 tracks. And I love how much of the bass is present on this record. Like I said, it matches perfectly the intensity of the record, the intensity of the tracks, and it really gives some really good, strong foundation on how these songs are built from a sound perspective. The drums are the next layer on top of that, adding so much heaviness to the overall experience of this album. And I really felt that they had this stability factor that allowed the guitars to be perhaps a little bit more dynamic and go into different directions. So the drums are there to give this heavy bass line to the record. And then the guitars add heaviness to it as well. But at the same time, because the drums are already heavy, the bass already has such a strong presence, you're allowed to be a little bit more wild, if you will, with what you can do with the guitars, either be the solos, the riffs, the melodies, whatever it is that you want to do. And that's exactly how they approach this record. They allow themselves to be a little bit more diverse as far as the guitars are concerned, sometimes driven, sometimes more melodic, sometimes groovier, sometimes heavier, because the drums and the bass gave it the foundation, gave that heaviness that the record needed so that the guitars could go in a much wider range of sounds and approaches. When you put it all together, you have a very diverse, but at the same time very cohesive, very compact sounding record that just feels raw and brutal and aggressive in how it sounds and in how it's delivered. The vocals match everything else that is happening. Perfect tone, perfect delivery, perfect output to bring out the intensity of the lyrics, but also to cap off the intensity that the tracks have and the way they sound and the way they're delivered to the audience. So I love the vocals on this record. They were very steady. The same approach that you get in the first song is going to be the same approach you're going to get throughout the rest of the album. There's not going to be a lot of duality of aspects as far as vocals are concerned. They didn't use a lot of backing vocals, a little bit here and there on a few tracks, just to add a little flavor, to add a little bit of a layer to it. But overall, it was very straight to the point and great delivery, great tone. Like I said, really enhancing the overall intensity and aggression that this album has to offer. Overall, this is an incredible thrash metal record, and this year has been a great year for thrash metal, and this album completely caught me off guard. I was expecting the album to be good. I was not expecting the album to be this raw, to be this good, to be this intense and steady with that intensity across all 10 songs. I was expecting perhaps the album to dip a little bit with one or two songs that were a little bit more methodic, but that was not the case. This was an album that grew in aggression, that grew in intensity, and it just kept pushing you forward with every single song. So a very strong album across all the parameters that make this record. As far as songs are concerned, I want to start off by Idle-Minded. Great tempo, and the vocals really match the tempo on this song, specifically in the verses. You feel like the song is moving fast and the vocals are moving just neck and neck with it, never falling behind. Musically and vocally, the song dips ever so slightly in the chorus. It loses a little bit of speed, but what loses in speed, it definitely gains in heaviness. It becomes an absolute brutal assault following the second chorus. The song just increases in aggression, increases in volume, and increases in heaviness. And then from there, you go into the solo. The solo is a lot different from everything else that was happening up until that point. The solo becomes a lot more melodic, it's a lot more creative, and it gives the perfect break for the song. It really allows you to catch your breath before the onslaught returns again and the song finishes as strong as it started. Next, Bring On the War, my favorite track on this album. I just love this track. It's a pure thrash metal banger, and it has a lot of creativity in how it is constructed. It's a song that sounds very big, it feels big, and it hits you big as well. It has a lot of volume, it has a lot of presence to it, and it's a song that has great drums. I love the drums on this track. I love the heaviness that they give to the track. And they really allow the guitars to push the limits, to push the boundaries of creativity and be a little bit more dynamic, change directions ever so slightly every so often. So they're a lot more diverse as far as guitars are concerned, because there's a lot of consistency coming from the drums on this track, as well as the vocals. The vocals also add a lot of consistency to how this track comes across. The chorus is very catchy, is very hooky. There are perhaps a little bit of lack of backing vocals in the chorus. I would really like to see that present there, because it would give the song a little bit more oomph, would give a little bit more impact, but overall it's really well put together. The solo is amazing. It pulls a little bit from the overall melody that the track has, and then it expands upon it. It pushes itself a little bit further, if you will. And then after the solo, the song was a 10. After the solo, it gets turned to 11. Because it was very methodic, it was heavy, slow-moving track up until that point, and then after the solo, everything just breaks down and the song becomes grittier, becomes heavier, starts moving faster. It completely changes its dynamic, it changes the way it's constructed, it changes the way it comes across, and it just has so much energy, it just has so much intensity. And then you get a solo towards the end of the track, and this is old school bliss and how the song finishes in such a strong note. Last but not least, Primeval, killer drums, and sick riff. That's pretty much how this song is put together. You're going to get killer drums, sick riff, you put those together, you have an incredible track from top to bottom. That is the foundation that this song has to offer. Another track that moves very fast, very aggressive, with a lot of intensity. The vocals always stay on track with how the song sounds. The two really go well and well together. Once the solo comes in, it explodes onto the track and it brings so much energy and light into this song. And you think that is it, but it's not, because then you're going to get a second solo that it's the first solo on steroids. That's how the second solo sounds, because after I heard the first solo, I was really mesmerized by the energy that that solo gave to the track. I didn't think they were going to put a second solo on this song. So when the second solo hits, it just feels like if they turned the first solo, like I said, to 11 or on steroids, depending on how you're looking at it. But it just adds a lot of energy, a lot of heaviness, a lot of sound. It expands the volume of the track itself. I love how consistent the song is. I love the changes, and these two solos really allow this song to be elevated and push it to the forefront, becoming one of the standout tracks on the album. This is it, guys. This is Harlott with Detritus of the Final Age, once again out November 13th on Metal Blade Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.